Hello everyone and welcome back to MedicAlert Moments That Matter. I'm Annie and I am so glad that you are here for this episode because it's one that I've been particularly excited about putting together. If you joined us for episode 1, Do I Need a MedicAlert? You'll remember that Dr. Caroline, the medical director here at MedicAlert, and I spent some time unpacking the why behind MedicAlert, who it's for, when it's helpful, and why having accurate medical information readily accessible in an emergency can genuinely make a difference. Today, however, we're shifting gears a little bit because it's one thing to talk about why having information matters, but it's another thing entirely to understand what happens in those moments when that information needs to be accessed. And by that, I mean the first few minutes in an emergency. The moments where paramedics might arrive on scene, decisions are happening quickly, and sometimes with very little to go on. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that most of us assume that in an emergency, someone will just figure it out. The paramedics will somehow have access to everything they need, that our phone or the people around us will just fill in the gaps. But is that actually what happens? And how much does having or not having that information change the care that someone receives? So, when I was writing this episode, I knew I did not just want the theory and the what-ifs. I wanted to hear from someone who has been there, someone who knows all too well what it's like to walk into those situations, assess a patient in seconds, and make critical decisions under pressure. Someone who will know exactly what paramedics are looking for and what they're often missing. Our guest today brings exactly that perspective, and then some. He began his career as a paramedic in 1974, working on the frontline, before moving through the ranks to become operations manager for the South Australian Ambulance Service, playing a key role in how emergency care is delivered across the state over an almost 45-year career with SA Ambulance. He then went on to work in public health and infection prevention and control with SA Health during the COVID-19 pandemic. With experience spanning emergency response, health leadership, clinical safety, and system-wide healthcare operations, he offers a rare and deeply informed perspective on what it takes to deliver the right care at the right time when every second counts. And today, he also brings that expertise to MedicAlert, serving as the director on the MedicAlert Foundation Australia board, helping guide how we support members and improve access to critical medical information in emergencies. We sat down to talk about what paramedics assess when they arrive, why time to information can be just as important as time to treatment, and how a MedicAlert can give first responders relevant emergency information when it matters most. So, without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Alan McLean for MedicAlert Moments That Matter, Episode 2. Who speaks for you? So, Alan, thank you so much for joining me today. You've had an incredibly broad career in emergency care, from frontline paramedicine through to leadership, so you've seen what this looks like from every angle. I'd love to start right at the point where everything begins, arriving on scene. So when you arrive at an emergency, what are you actually walking into, and what are the first things going through your mind?
Yeah, that's a good question, in that it depends. On the way to a scene, you're actually starting to think about the case, and you can only be guided by the information the 000 callers have taken by someone at the scene. So sometimes that's reasonably accurate, and sometimes it's completely wrong.
Oh, interesting.
So it's important not to have a preconceived idea too much about what's going on, but most cases you can have a think about what you're going to get to. And an idea. And there are little telltale signs. It depends where it is, time of day, what sort of things happened. So those things go through your mind when you first arrive, but you're also looking around. So situation awareness is really important. I mean, first of all, is there anything that's going to cause any harm to anyone, particularly you?
Yes, definitely.
Because if you get hurt, the next ambulance is even further away. So that's not going to help anyone. So paramedics sometimes look like they might be dawdling, but they're actually taking it a lot as they walk in just to make sure that everything's okay and also try and get an idea of what's happened. And not surprisingly, in some cases, what people tell you isn't actually factual. So sometimes they may tell you stories to help them get out of other issues, legal issues with the police or that sort of thing. So
I hadn't considered that.
So it really depends. So if it's in someone's home, that sort of narrows it down a bit. And particularly if it's a known condition such as someone's got chest pain or someone's collapsed, that makes it a bit more easier to define. But if it's in the street, you really have no idea what you're attending to.
I think for a lot of people, what actually happens in those moments is probably quite different to what they imagine. So I know for me, it challenged a few assumptions. There's this idea that information will just be available, whether it's on a phone, through medical records, or even people nearby. But how accurate is that? What's the reality when it comes to accessing information in an emergency?
It's really difficult. 99.9% of the patients you will see, you've never seen before. And a large percentage of them, probably 80 or 90%, have never been in an ambulance before. Be their first time. So there's no history to go by that's recorded anywhere. And so you quite often don't know who they are. If someone's unconscious or disorientated, they can't tell you either who they are or what's going on. So you do have to rely on what bystanders will tell you. And sometimes, as I said, their perception of what's happened is not always
the case.
So, and it may be that they've just made assumptions. I mean, it's not uncommon for someone to call an ambulance, find someone and think that they've had a heart attack or that they're just drunk or have taken drugs, and it's completely wrong. They have an underlying medical problem that they have that isn't obvious.
Exactly. And I guess if they're in a point that they're not able to communicate that, then all you're really going on is assumptions.
It is. And the other thing is that, I mean, just think about when you go to the doctor and you go to the doctor with you're not feeling well.
No.
If it's because you're not feeling well, how many times have you come away thinking, I forgot to tell them this or I forgot to mention that? When you're unwell, it's hard to remember all the things you need to remember.
Exactly.
And communicate them. And when it's an emergency, it's even harder. The number of times it's very common to pick someone up, assess them, get all the history, treat them. And when you get to the hospital, the patient then tells the hospital staff a different story because they've remembered more.
Oh, my goodness.
And they say things that they never told you. And you go, well, wish you'd told me that because that would have made a difference.
Exactly right.
But that's because it's, half an hour or an hour later and they've had more time to think about it. And of course, with the treatment we give them, they feel better in lots of cases. And so they actually are able to remember things better. But those initial first moments, it's very difficult. There's really not much to go. So you have to go by your observations and experience.
So what about people that sort of run under the assumption that paramedics will be able to check their phone for information? Yeah,
that's always interesting. First of all, not everyone has a phone on them. They may have a phone, but they don't always have it on them. For example, if you're in an accident, like a car accident, your phone may have been dislodged and thrown somewhere that no one can find it anyway.
That's a good point.
Or it might be damaged. Phones can get damaged quite easily in people that have falls or in accidents. And even if they have a phone and it's there, if they're not able to open it for you, there's really not a lot you can see.
No, exactly right.
I know some phones are now getting to the point where you can actually access some information, but that's always an assumption that someone's going to find your phone and then think about looking at it. And that's not always the case. And paramedics are very reluctant to go through your personal belongings to look for things.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's not without someone's consent usually, but unless you've got no other choice, but it's something you tend not to do. You don't leave yourself open for something going missing and then you getting the blame for it.
Yeah, and the liability issues with that.
So, and there are so many things to look for. Do you look for a phone? Do you look for a card? Do you look for, the driver's license? And, you don't look really for any of those things. You use your observations and your assessment of the patient and what's going on. And the situation that's presented will dictate a lot of what you think, unless they've got something like a MedicAlert bracelet.
Exactly right. And so if we can't rely on those things, I guess that raises a really important question. What can people then do to make sure that the right information is available when it matters most?
Well, if you ask a paramedic who's seen the QR code enabled medical alert device, that's a game changer again. The QR code was a game changer, the NFC chips even more, because I like to think of it as your passport to the health system because it has all your information on it that you need. And it's not like My Health Care record, which has a lot of information, but it's not presented in a way that someone can find the urgent information quickly.
Yes, exactly right.
There's a lot of information that's quite irrelevant, particularly in an emergency setting. And also, you can decide what you put on there, what's important to you.
And then I guess what you also are giving consent for people to be able to access in that emergency as well.
Exactly. And the other thing is that it's universal in that it doesn't just work in Australia or anywhere else, that it works anywhere in the world. And I've had experience with this where in my own trips where my wife has become unwell in Fiji, and she's got complicated health issues that some people do. And when they were asking her health history, she couldn't remember. And I said to her, just show them your QR code. And she did. And they were just blown away because it was all there.
Goodness.
So she didn't have to remember anything. It was all there. It was all written down for them. So it makes a huge difference to have that sort of information quickly. And there's so many things that paramedics have said that is useful, such as advanced care directives, which are really important if you have those sort of wishes. It's all very well to have an advanced care directive, but unless it's on you, no one's going to see it.
No, exactly
or
right.
know what it says. And my understanding is that the only people who can access it on scene is via MedicAlert QR code. It's all very well for your lawyer to have a copy or a family member to have a copy, but that's no good at the bedside when something's happened and you want someone to obey your wishes. The other thing is that things like ECGs, paramedics love the fact that you can put a 12-lead ECG on there. And so they can look at that, and that's your normal. That's normal for you, because when you do observations on patients, you have no idea what's normal for that person unless it's written down.
You don't have, I guess, that baseline.
There's no baseline. Yeah, yeah, and there is no standard normal. Everyone has normal for themselves.
For themselves, yes.
And so, but I mean, there are ranges of things. If your heart rate's 200, that's probably abnormal for everyone. But if it's 55, that might be normal for you, but it might be low for other people. So without having a standard baseline, knowing what it is for you as an individual, it's very hard to tell if something's wrong. So they just love that. And when we've shown it to them, they just get blown away.
I mean, it's just so amazing. I guess even with medications too, I guess if you're ever trying to administer something and it could interact with something that they are on, have there been any cases where a MedicAlert would have come in handy if someone has been on a medication?
Absolutely. But there's lots of medications that will interact with frontline medications we use as
right, okay, sure.
So one of the straightforward ones is, for example, Viagra. Not everyone's going to tell you they're on Viagra.
Yes.
And the paramedics will ask. But if you're in the middle of having chest pain and you're distressed, it may be something you just forget or don't mention. Whereas if it's on your MedicAlert history, they can see that. And they then have to use different medication that they wouldn't give you normally. So but there are lots of incidences where medications can not only interact with each other, but mask other things happening. So some heart medications will stop your heart from going too fast. But if you need your heart to go too fast, or you'd expect someone's heart to be higher than it is because something's happened, it's not. And unless you know they're on a medication that does that, you may be questioning what's going on. So there's lots of instances where medication is important to know. And if you have complex health issues, or even if you don't, even if you take just simple things, it's important that the healthcare system knows what you're taking.
With the time saved by having a MedicAlert and trying to discern between those pieces of information, what sort of outcome does that usually have for the patient in terms of getting quicker treatment or being able to determine where they move on that hierarchy?
It sort of ranges from nice to know to critical to know.
Yes.
It can change from you having a quicker recovery from something to having life-changing conditions happen to you. Now, for example, if you've got an advanced care directive and you don't want to be resuscitated,
yes,
and no one knows that, and you're resuscitated, that's a life-changing event and you may well end up not wanting to have had that happen. So they're the sort of things that paramedics don't know because unless it's tattooed on your head, and people have tried that and it doesn't work, the only way to do it is to have for the paramedics to have access to those, that information at the bedside, if you like, at the patient's side.
Yes, and I think that another amazing aspect of that is for people's religious beliefs, whether it's, Jehovah's Witnesses not wanting to receive blood.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just that, but also cultural beliefs and also language problems. So if English is not your first language, you could have an enormous problem trying to tell someone what's wrong with you or your history, particularly when you feel well, never mind when you feel unwell or have had an accident.
Yes, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to translate in your mind and piece together.
Yeah, and quite often when we have people who have language barriers, there may well be a relative or someone there, but they're interpreting what you're saying and putting it into their context rather than factual what you want someone to know. So, again, having access to someone's health record and the important information is critical. And the thing about the way we've set up the QR code is that, and this was done with paramedic involvement, where we wanted to know what things do they want to know first. Yes. And what do they want to know underneath that, which is not as important.
So is there some sort of hierarchy in how it's organised?
There is, yes, yeah. Unlike my healthcare record, which seems to be just a whole
sort of grouping of unorganised ideas just mushed into one, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and that's good for its purpose in the GP's office or in the hospital, but at the roadside you need to have concise, accurate information that you can access quickly, and it's in that order. And so having that means that you can quickly determine a course of action for that person, and one that they're going to be happy with.
Yes.
Rather than doing something that you later find out that they didn't want that done to them, or that they have a reaction to that's made them worse.
And knowing that if there was something there that could have prevented that all from happening in the first place, is just so much better.
And that's why paramedics are so engaged with this. If you ask a paramedic, they would, the ones that have seen this, that they would say they wished everyone had one, not just people with complex medical problems, because that's not the case. It's gone from that. It's gone from the days when I started of having, just written on there you've got diabetes or epilepsy, to now you can put on your important health information.
And even documents as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Discharge letters, care plans. If you've got asthma, you can put your care plan on there, or care plans for mental health, so that when you're in a mental health crisis, someone's in a mental health crisis, if they can see your care plan, they know what to do, rather than some of the options, which are not very nice for people. And it's not nice for the paramedics or for the patient. But without the right information, you have no choice. And so if there's a care plan there, you can find out what's the best way for you to be treated. And the one thing paramedics hate is hurting someone unintentionally or hurting someone at all.
Yes.
Because that's not what they're there to do.
And just all because of lack of information really having no other choice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because if you don't have the information, you then have to fall back to first principles and guidelines and protocols, because there's nothing else to go on. And those protocols and guidelines don't always suit everyone.
No, that's exactly right. So moving on from the individual aspect, I guess it's also about how the system recognizes and uses that information when it's there. So I know that some of our members have been concerned that emergency responders aren't being educated and aren't scanning their QR codes. So from your role on the board with MedicAlert, what's being done to make sure that paramedics are aware and they are actively checking for it?
It is a concern when we hear that members have had experiences where paramedics have not wanted to or didn't know. Unfortunately, that's just a fact of life in every profession and everywhere that you go. You're going to come across some people who haven't found something out or paid attention. But what we've done is there's the thing called the Council of Ambulance Authorities, which is every ambulance authority in Australia, New Zealand and Papua New Guinea. And they have CEOs and they have subcommittees. It's the overriding council over ambulance services in Australia, because each service is obviously state-based, but this brings them all together into a national forum.
Wow.
And we've been through, and they've endorsed this, the QR code and MedicAlert. They think it's wonderful. And they've taken on to actually educate ambulance paramedics. And so we're in the process at the moment of trying to engage again with ambulance services to make sure we do this on a regular basis. We've attended their conferences and things, and have a stand there so they can come up and see what we're doing and educate them. I would say if a member does come across someone who's, and it's not just paramedics, it may be any health professional who says, oh, no, I don't want to look at that, say no, insist, say, get out your camera and take the QR code or tap your phone on it when the new system comes in, and make them do it. Don't take no, and say, if you want to know something, it's in there. And it's important that members keep their records up to date for that reason.
Oh, yes, of course.
So every time I've got one, I don't have very much on there at all, but I have it because I know that. I'll give you an example. I actually had a fall and I was concussed and I was quite badly hurt. And this was only a few years ago. And I was in the emergency department in the resus trauma part, and I was being asked questions, simple things like, when was the last time you had a tetanus shot? Now, I had no idea.
My goodness.
I knew I had one, but I had no idea when. I had trouble working out what day it was. But it was on my QR code.
Oh my, that's amazing.
Because I've put simple things like that. I put my vaccination record on there so you can see it.
And that's something that anyone can do.
Absolutely. It's just a PDF. You can just upload it. So you don't need to have a chronic health problem for it to be useful. The other thing, of course, is that it has all your details on it. So if you're out doing a sporting event or you've just gone out to go around the corner and you didn't take any identification with you, you've got it on your wrist or your necklace or wherever it may be. And if something happens, we'll know who you are by looking at it.
Exactly, and potentially get in contact with emergency contacts.
Absolutely, yeah.
All of that.
Yes, it has multiple layers to it. It's not just a device that says I've got diabetes or epilepsy. It's, as I said, it really is, to me, the passport into the health system for the healthcare providers, if you like.
Yes.
It's their way of checking your passport to see what's going on.
And I think that the international aspect of it too is just so useful. The fact that you can go on holiday anywhere. Anywhere
in the world, anywhere there is internet access, it can be used. Yes, absolutely.
Wow. I know that there was one thing that you were particularly interested in talking about, but it's how much things have actually changed in time with what MedicAlert has had. So when we first started off in Australia in the 70s and, you just had your piece of jewellery, and now how much further that has gone. With the new NFC member cards, what is the best way for people to go about using that? Is that just to keep it on their person at all times and have that available, or keep it in their wallet?
The cards are a great step forward. However, they don't replace the need to have something on yourself, whether it be a bracelet. I mean, I've got mine on my smartwatch band, and it's not on there. There's nothing extra. It's just on there because I wear my smartwatch all the time anyway.
Yes.
And it kind of looks nice too. So with the new cards, it's better if you carry them all the time, of course. But there are going to be times when you won't be able to have that. And so, if you're playing sport or you're swimming or whatever, or you don't take your wallet or wherever, your handbag, wherever it may be, with you for a particular event, having it on you all the time is useful, but having the QR code on your body is the best.
And with the NFC member cards, How easy then is it for just a regular bystander to be able to access that and scan that?
Yeah, it's not, you have to have real direct contact with those, and the QR code as well is not that easy to scan from the wrong angles. But keep in mind that we've got some safety in there, in that the information that's on there in the front page is just your age and your name. You don't have a date of birth or an address in there. But every time it's scanned, you get a message saying it's been scanned.
Oh, I see.
So you'll get
access.
So you'll get a text message and or an email. You can get both, and that's what I do because I'm always showing people mine, so I know that works very well. And so you get within seconds you'll get a message. So if it goes off, it's someone who's standing next to you who's done it. It's not like they've done it and you're going to get the message and they've disappeared. They're going to be right, but it's quite hard to actually access. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is the information that you want to share with people anyway.
Yes, it's been selected by you.
That's right. Yeah. So you don't have to put your deep dark secrets on there if they're not relevant to an emergency setting. And I'm not aware of actually anyone having reported it being scanned without their consent.
MedicAlert actually able to track exactly who has scanned it as well.
We do get some information about the device that's being used. And the other thing, of course, is if you lose your QR code in any way, you just have to notify MedicAlert and they will cancel it and give you a new one. So someone can scan it and they'll get nothing.
Oh, no, won't come back again.
No. The other thing is that once it's scanned, the information is only accessible for a short period of time. So it's not like you can scan it and then keep the information.
Right, so they really have thought of everything to make sure it's very protected.
As much as we can, yes. Yeah. It's a balance between giving the best access to medical information and also the best access to privacy and security. So I have no concerns at all that it's not user-friendly and also safe.
I wanted to sort of also touch on what people listening could do if they do ever find themselves in an emergency, whether they be the bystander or come across someone, perhaps even a stranger that they don't know. I think that oftentimes emergencies can come with a lot of fear, not knowing what to do, or even worrying about getting it wrong. A lot of people sort of hesitate sometimes, and the bystander effect might come into place, and they won't really want to help out with first aid and that sort of thing because they are too scared of getting something wrong. So from your perspective, what should everyday bystanders do if they ever do find themselves in that kind of situation?
Emergencies are confronting, particularly if it's someone who you know or a loved one is involved, and it's very common for people to be in a panic. The best advice is to ring 000.
Yes.
When you ring 000, if you're using a mobile phone, you'll need to tell them which city you're in because they don't necessarily track where you are because the first call goes through to Telstra, either in Melbourne or Sydney. Oh, does it? And then they ask where you are, and they put you through to the service of the state you're in. So you would ring on, most people ring on a mobile phone. You would just say that you're in Adelaide or Perth or wherever you are, and then you would say you want ambulance, and they'll put you through. Then you will get an ambulance call taker. And I used to manage, one of the roles I had in the ambulance service was managing the state command control center, which took all the 000 calls for ambulance across the state.
Wow, so you really saw everything.
So it was every day I'd walk through. I was in there quite often, and I would hear the call takers taking into, and they're well trained. If you've ever watched news stories where you hear the 000 call taker and how calm and collected they are, and giving advice to children to do resuscitation on parents.
That's the first thing that came to my mind, those kinds of stories.
Yeah. Or sadly giving resuscitation to mothers to give information to resuscitate babies and things. They can do that. And that's so you don't have to worry about not knowing what to do because they will give you instructions what to do. They will talk you through the process of doing resus, stopping bleeding, helping someone who's unconscious, and whatever it may be, they will be able to give you advice on what to do, as well as send the ambulance. So it's not you're not just booking an ambulance, you're ringing up and you're getting advice. So 000 is by far the best way to call an ambulance. Now, if you've got a home alert button that will call someone, or if you've got some other device that'll do that.
Or like a false alarm.
False alarms are excellent if you're by yourself and you cannot get to a phone. I have been to people who could have used a phone but just pressed the button instead. And that's a problem because it doesn't always go straight through to the ambulance service, and a third party will take the information and then transfer the call and then ring the ambulance. You're much better if you have the option to call 000 yourself or call for someone else.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if before the thing's gone off and it's been called as well, still call 000 if you can. Because they'll ask you more information about what's going on because they triage what's happened. And they can then send that information to the ambulance that's going to you and update them about what's going on. They can also give you advice about what to do as far as first aid goes. And they are very good at doing that. You just have to follow their instructions and they'll talk you through it.
Is there any sort of liability for the public if they were perhaps doing first aid on a stranger and they did make a mistake?
I have never known anyone in the I've been doing this for a very long time, who has been held accountable for something that they did that didn't go well. Of course, it's different if you do something intentionally. It's a different story. But if you're trying to help someone, there is no risk really to any action taken, as long as you can show that you're doing it for the right reasons. And if you're following the instructions on the 000 call, then the ambulance service takes the responsibility really because they tell me what to do.
Oh, I see.
So there's this thing about I don't want to be involved because I don't want to get in trouble for doing something wrong. I would look at the other way, is that how's your conscience going to feel about the fact you did nothing because you were too scared you might get into trouble? When in fact there's very little risk of that happening at all.
It's a very good way of looking at it. All of the what ifs, I guess you could sort of go through.
Yes. And because when people are confronted with trauma of any kind, they will think about it later on. And it is rewarding to know that you've done the best you could to help in that circumstance. Yeah.
Exactly. So for then emergency preparedness, would you just recommend that everyone perhaps go and get CPR certified?
Absolutely. And if you could do a CPR course, it's just a straight CPR, or if you can do a first aid course, which will include that as well.
Yes.
Certainly. I mean, it's going to be useful. And even if it's not, you get to learn some skills that, and you get to meet people. You also have the confidence knowing that if something goes wrong, you know what to do. And so definitely getting training is very worthwhile. However, if you're not trained, it doesn't mean you shouldn't give something a go. And the 000 call taker in the ambulance service will give you advice how to do that. They'll give you step-by-step instructions over the phone. A lot of times they'll ask you to put your phone on speaker if you can.
Oh, so then you've got all your hands free.
You can put it down and they can talk to you and they can listen to what's going on. Even with CPR, they'll count down the rhythm, how often to do it. So and where to put your hands and
then how to set up a defibrillator too.
Yes, they can help with that as well. Yeah, although defibrillators, AEDs, are so simple to use. There are many different models, but they all have basically the same logic, which is you open it up and it starts talking to you.
Wow.
And it will tell you what to do. It will say, place the pads, open the person's chest, clear the chest, place the pads here and press this button and stamp. It's all automated. You don't have to worry about using it.
So I actually think I heard that because I do a lot of babysitting and nannying. So I've done all of my education and care first aid courses. And I remember them saying that the defibrillators we use in that first aid session are actually a lot older than the ones you'll actually see out and about, and that it would actually be even easier.
Yeah, the new ones, states like South Australia have now got legislation where public buildings have to have defibrillators in them, which is a fantastic thing. It's like a fire extinguisher. I mean, these days people will be horrified to know that there's no fire extinguisher in the building. Well, they should be horrified to know there's no defibrillator in the building.
No defibrillator, exactly right.
And one of the things that you'll be asked if you do come across a situation like that where someone's collapsed, the call taker the ambulance call taker will ask you if there's a defibrillator nearby. And a lot of the ambulances now have registries of where they are. So they may say to you,
amazing.
So they may say to you, cool, we can see a defibrillator nearby. Can you send someone to go and get it? and put it on. And as I said, they're so easy to use.
And I know that there's also a lot of rules with the maintenance of them, so making sure that they're checked, working.
Yes. There are not many moving parts in them, but they do need to be checked and serviced as according to the manufacturer. They'll have different regimes for different products.
Yes. And I was also really interested to see, I think they've got them all on trains now as part of the public transport network as well.
Yes. And there's also a thing called Good Sam, which people may have heard of, which is an app. I have this, and it's for healthcare. People have been trained, volunteer themselves to do it. And if something is nearby and the ambulance is a long way away, the ambulance service can see where you are and will send you a message and ask you to go and help out.
Oh, my goodness, that's brilliant.
Yeah. So you may find that if you're at some emergency, someone may turn up and then they say, I'm a nurse or a doctor or a paramedic or, in civies or, because they're on the Good Sam app and they'll get responded. And it works. I've been in Melbourne and Sydney and had calls to go and help people. So
really?
And Adelaide as well, yeah. So it's quite widespread and it works overseas too.
That's amazing. So I guess for when to call an ambulance in a certain scenario, sometimes a patient might be asking that you don't call an ambulance.
Yes.
But is it up to your discretion whether you respect their wishes or should you call the ambulance?
That's the decision you have to make at the time. You have to ask yourself, are they asking you not to call the ambulance because they're worried about what it's going to cost? Are they worried about they don't want to bother anyone, which is not a good reason not to call? Are they worried about they just don't want to go to hospital? Or is it that they have wishes that they don't want anything done in those particular circumstances because they've already made plans for that case?
Yes.
So, and if you don't know, just call the ambulance because they'll work it out when they get there. The paramedics will decide, whether you need to go to hospital. If the person says no, they'll decide whether it's safe to leave them there, and they may well be able to organise alternative care for them as well, for someone else to come and see them, so they don't have to. In lots of cases, people don't need to go to hospital. Sometimes they just need a bit of help, over an event. So it may be the paramedics will come and give them some treatment and they're fine to stay at home.
So in that case, would you say that if ever you're in doubt in an emergency situation, it would at least just be best to call 000 and get advice from them on the next steps?
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Before we wrap up, is there one thing that you would want everyone listening to take away from this conversation?
The important thing, I think, is that to keep in mind that when an ambulance turns up and the paramedics come out, they don't know you in most cases. And so they have no idea what your history is, what your desires and wishes are. And there's no way of knowing that unless they can ask you. And if you're not in a position to be able to tell them, you're then at their whim to decide what they will do for you rather than what you want done yourself. Whereas if you can have it on your MedicAlert QR code and ask them to access that, insist they do it, then they can see what your history is, they can see any wishes that you have, and they know what's the best course of action then to take.
Thank you so much for your time. I've learned so much, even just from our conversation. I feel like if I were to walk into an emergency, I'd have a much better idea of what to do. Thank you so much for your experience and insights. I'm very excited actually to get to the editing and to see the final product of what we can create with this. So thank you again.
I hope it's useful for people, and I hope it encourages them to think about their health and how they access the emergency health system and not to be scared of it. And you've got the ability to actually help yourself by doing some pre-planning.
All right, it's just me again, Annie, popping back in after the interview. If you found yourself thinking that a MedicAlert might be helpful for you or someone you know whilst listening, everything you need is in the show notes, including where to find more information and how to get in touch with the MedicAlert team. If you have any podcast questions you'd like answered or topics you'd love us to explore, the marketing team would love to hear from you. Those details are in the show notes too. Thank you so much for listening to episode 2 of MedicAlert Moments That Matter. Who speaks for you? If you found this podcast helpful or even just a bit of fun to listen to, please follow the show or share it with others. I am so excited to introduce you to even more brilliant guests with a wealth of knowledge in the episodes to come. This podcast was written, hosted, and produced by me, Annie Pittman, with support from MedicAlert Foundation Australia. And of course, thank you again to Dr. Alan McLean for appearing in this month's episode. Until next time.